and good evening to tonight's edition of Talk Oxford. My name's Tony Long, I'm your host for this evening. And don't forget that while we're on, you can always get in touch with us. You can tweet us at That's Oxford TV, or you can email us at talk@that'soxford.com. But without any further ado, let me introduce my guests for you this evening. In fact, I'll let them introduce themselves. They both know each other well, so I'll pass over first. Ladies first, Bernadette.
Right. My name is Bernadette Tildersley. I have lived in a small market town in Oxfordshire for almost 50 years, having moved there when my husband was posted there as a policeman. Since retiring, I've been able to devote time to amateur theatricals, where I met Graham.
Indeed. Graham Sinclair Jones. I'm a retired education officer from local government, having previously been a teacher. I've lived in Oxfordshire for 26 years, so relative newcomer really. And yes, and so got to know Bernadette. We live very close to each other, and we have on occasions even performed together on the stage.
Good, thank you. And the first subject that we'll talk about this evening will be the one we, I think, all like to talk about. That's our National Health Service. There seems to be opinions from we all think it's the best thing that's ever happened, or we think it doesn't do a job at all. Now, I know, Graham, you've been involved in a patient participation group. So tell us, what does that involve, and how does that help?
Well, patient participation groups, Tony, are based at each GP surgery. Each surgery has one. And the idea is that anything from half a dozen to a dozen or so patients meet every couple of months, in our case, to share ideas with the staff, with the clinicians, to learn more about how things work, and to feed in some thoughts about what we think, is going well and perhaps isn't necessarily going so well.
What level of input do you get into the way the practice is operated? Any at all?
Oh yes, we do. I mean, I like to think that we have some sort of impact on the way things are run. I mean, it's an opportunity certainly for the staff, not just the doctors, but particularly the admin staff, to meet patients outside, if you like, the consulting room, where when there is obviously time to talk about much more than one's own particular condition.
GP surgeries these days come under a lot of scrutiny. In fact, the government wants them to be operating 7 days a week, and how practical is that? And people think that it takes so long to get an appointment to see a doctor. So are those the kind of topics that...
Yes, I mean, that's the sort of thing that does come up in discussion, certainly. I mean, 7-day working, I mean, it's a big ask, isn't it? And I'm aware very much from our own practice and from elsewhere that it would put huge pressure on any surgery. Particularly at a time when it's getting very difficult to recruit GPs anyway. I mean, the practice I'm involved with has had good recruitment lately, but I'm aware that elsewhere in Oxfordshire it's getting very, very difficult, and a lot of GPs are retiring. A lot of them are wanting to retire young because of the pressure of the job.
Bernadette, I know you've been using our National Health Service lately. We don't want to know why, but you have.
Yes.
What's been your experience, firstly, through GPs?
Locally, very good.
Okay.
Yes, but I would say that having our own doctor on hand over the weekend would be absolutely marvellous. I don't necessarily feel that surgeries should be open at the weekend, but to have a doctor on call like we used to have would be so much more comforting, and I would have thought better than having a 111 doctor coming from 40, 50 miles away.
Have you had to use
At
the
a cost.
111?
Yes, I have. Yes, yes, yes.
And how did they respond when you used it?
As quickly as they could, but which happened to be, quite slow, in my opinion. Perhaps I was just unlucky. Anyway.
I think all of us are old enough to remember those days when you could just walk into the surgery in the morning and sit there for an hour and wait for the doctor, but clearly that doesn't happen anymore. No. Why is it that we have to wait sometimes days for an appointment?
I'm not sure if we necessarily have to, if it's important. There are different types of appointment, as far as I'm aware, in that there are routine appointments which are booked well in advance, and there are slots for urgent consultation. And I have the impression that certainly in this county, if you need to see a doctor urgently, you will be able to, usually on that day or very, very soon after, because they obviously they program slots into their day for emergencies. They know very well that not everybody gets ill at 2 weeks in advance, so they're able to manage.
It seems
those.
more and more, especially if you have a problem out of hours, that patients are going directly to the A&E department.
Yes, true.
And that clearly is causing a problem with A&E. If we can move on to the sort of secondary care side of the NHS and the hospitals, is there a solution to that? The A&E being so congested and people waiting several hours to be seen?
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that inevitably there's huge pressure on the hospital services generally, isn't there, as we know, both in terms of numbers of users and resources available, and A&E departments are no exception to that. I think there's a problem in terms of people using A&E who perhaps do not need to, partly with the perception that they can't get an appointment at their surgery, or partly having perhaps a higher expectation than they might have for treatment of something relatively minor. That's the worry. And then if you add on, things like the pressure of excess drinking over the weekend and the sort of problems that causes in A&E. I mean, the large numbers of people turning up for whom a good night out is just to get too much booze inside them and then fall over in the street.
Should we treat those sort of people any differently? Should they be the ones to have to wait longer? Should we be even considering charging people for those sort of social services almost?
Oh, that's a very tricky one, isn't it?
How do you charge? How do you get the money out of them? Yeah.
I would, though. I'd like to be able in some way to give priority to people who are not, if you like, self-harming is the wrong term, but you know what I mean.
Yes, bring it on themselves.
Put it on themselves.
Yes, yes.
We hear lots these days about like the mid-staffs problem, where the quality of the service or the treatment being given was under question. I think we probably have a very good service here in Oxfordshire, but have you had any experience, Bernadette, of any sort of changes in the level of service or quality that you've got?
No. Offhand, I can't say. So what I would be interested in, if I may ask a question.
Feel free.
You say, going locally again, doctors are under pressure. Is that because we expect more of them? Do they have to do more paperwork? What brings on the pressure that doctors are under? Do you know that? You can't answer that because you're not a doctor.
Exactly. But I suspect that a doctor would answer to those two questions you posed. I guess most doctors would answer yes and yes, that we perhaps we have very high expectations.
Yes.
not unjustifiably, but there is certainly a lot of paperwork.
So
And
is all
it's
this
essential.
paperwork really necessary? What happens to it all? Does anybody ever read it? Does it go into statistics?
Well, much of it is computerised now, isn't it? I mean, certainly our health records are on
Yes, yes.
on
yes.
computers. That sort of record keeping is essential, though, isn't it? If you think about it, I mean, you can't do away
Oh,
with
no,
this.
no. Especially when now, if it is completely computerised, we can go to a doctor in the north of England and we can just find out what tablets we're taking, all this sort of business.
I think we're very lucky here. I have to say, you know, from my own personal point of view, I think I'm fortunate to be here, not just the opportunity to talk to you, Tony, because just over a year ago, the NHS service locally saved my life. You know, as simple as that. You know,
Yes.
it was a very alert GP, a very efficient ambulance service, and a splendid surgeon and his team who bailed me out in the cardiac unit at
Yes,
the JR.
and I can verify that personally.
Fantastic,
Well, not
yes.
me personally, but
Yeah.
yes.
But it's not always that
someone
good, is
close
it?
to me. You know, it
Yeah.
was absolutely marvellous. I was astounded at the efficiency
Yeah.
and the speed
I think
which everything was done
So when
in the
it's really-
cardiac unit.
When it's really needed, it works extremely
Yes,
well.
yes.
We're always talking about, is there enough money in the NHS? We can get some more greater efficiencies perhaps, but will there ever be enough money in the NHS?
No.
Should there be? Should we be expecting our government, or we as taxpayers, just to be putting more and more in so that we have a service that can match anything in the world?
The money that is spent there has got to be spent efficiently, hasn't it? And
We're never going to have an unlimited pool of money, are we?
No.
I mean, under whatever government or whatever organisation
That's right.
of the service.
And with the progress being made in medicine now, and all these progressions cost more and more money. Yes.
So we will never have enough money, but we do at least have a service which does serve us as well as it can. Good.
On the whole, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think at that point we'll take a break. So in the second half we're going to talk about charity mugging, as it's been called. But before then, if you'd like to get in touch, don't forget that you can tweet us at That's Oxford TV or email us at talk@that'soxford.com. So we'll see you in a couple of minutes.